Hello and welcome. This is Mouse Gunner. I want to take a look at Into the Void. This is a game that came out recently, and I have put a few hours into it so that I could get a feel for the gameplay mechanics, as well as get a little bit into the progression of the game, because where you start off in this game is pretty bare bones, and I want to get a little further into it so I could see how some of the tech works and see more of the features of the game. Now, this is billed as a 4X turn-based strategy game in space, and I don't know if the 4X is really, that description is really the best way to represent this game. Honestly, I would say this is a fleet simulation game more than it is a 4X game. And one of the reasons for that is, as we're at our base of operations, the Starbase, this is the only place you can do your building and research. While you're in mission, you cannot do any construction or research of any kind, so whatever fleet you bring into that mission is what you've got. As a matter of fact, these resources that I have up in the upper left corner are pretty much meaningless during mission, so it's only really used while you're at your starbase. The first thing we're going to look at is the research tech tree. Now, one of the resources I have here is for research, and you spend that to do your research. Now, the tech tree that you have in this game is reminiscent of the one found in Master Orion 2, but very much simplified over that game. So you have four main categories of research: engineering, physics, computer, and power. And each of these have their own little trees. Now, the tabs that are in green are things I've already researched, and the clear tabs are ones that I have not done any research on. The locked ones are ones that I have not yet discovered, so you're always going to have a view of the next tech level and any tree. But beyond that, you don't really know, outside of the little description here, what that tech's going to be. If I click on a tech, it's going to show me what I gained from that tech. So, for instance, in this particular tech, I'm going to gain this EMP weapon here, and it kind of describes what that's going to do for me. If I were to click on a different item in that tech tree, we get to see what I would get instead. So this is the shield drainer. So rather than getting an EMP beam, I would get a beam that disables the enemy's ability to regenerate its shields for a number of turns. And as I go through the tech tree, you unlock more and more things. So in this case, I can get a shield generator, a better shield generator, as well as a recharging beam. My alternative here is for gravity engines. I get a new engine, but I also get the recharging beam as well. So some things you have to make a compromise on, and some things you don't. If I highlight a tech that I haven't yet researched, we can see how much of my resource for the research it would cost. So this would cost 12,500 to research. I have 16,805, so I could research that if I wanted to. I could also research something at the same tech level of something I've already researched, but the cost of that research goes up dramatically. So we can see here at 65,000 research points to unlock the tech at a level I've already researched at. So you can unlock all of the tech at a certain level, but the cost to do so is pretty prohibitive. So more than likely, you're going to end up making choices as you go down through the tech tree and kind of sticking to them. Now, each tech tree is going to have its own feel for it. For instance, engineering is the main way that you're going to get your hulls unlocked. So with this tech level, I got the rocket battleship. My alternative would have been a more generic battleship that wasn't single purpose like the rocket battleship is. So that's kind of the compromise that I made there. Moving along, I could get another hull at the next tech level as I go along. Physics is going to have mostly weapons, but it depends on the tech level. But for instance, I chose not to research the plasma autogun here, and instead chose to do a laser weapon. And that's a compromise that I did, and in that case, I can build laser weapons, but not plasma weapons. So let's go ahead and research something. What sounds interesting here? I honestly am probably just going to go with the shields here. I like shields, don't we all? And I've unlocked that, and now level 5 is visible to me, whereas before it wasn't. Now I can click on any of these to see what I would get from it. But if I click on the next level, I cannot see that. So you can't really see what's really further down the line. Only the next tech level is visible. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the building of items. So this is where you can build all the different items that are equipable on ships. The items that look like they're got a graph paper background are items that I have blueprints for. So if I were to click on this, I could produce this. These are the resources it would cost to produce it. It would cost 600. I believe the resources are ore, crystal, and antimatter. But it would cost me 600 ore and 200 crystal to build this. Now, the items without the blueprint background are items that I have already built and may or may not be equipped on a ship. So if I click on this one, it will tell me if it's equipped on a ship and which ship it's equipped on, and some stats about it. But if it's an already constructed item, I can also upgrade it and increase its abilities. And you can actually see the summary of what would happen if I were to upgrade this weapon here. So the mass would increase, as would the power consumption, which are both bad things, but the advantage that I would get is increased accuracy, increased damage. Now, if we can do a comparison here, you can see with the kinetic autogun here, not a whole lot of resources to build, but if I go to a level 1 kinetic gun, because this is a level 2 that's already been upgraded, we can see the upgrade cost goes up pretty dramatically. It's actually tripled over just building a base level 1 gun. If we go to the level 2 gun here, we see that upgrading it to level 3 would double the cost of what it costs to get up to level 2. So the cost goes up and up as well. Now, there are different types of damage in this game. As I already described, there are laser weapons and plasma weapons. So there's laser damage and plasma damage. There's also kinetic damage, explosive damage as well. And then this item here, the recharging beam, actually is not a weapon. This is something that I would use to supply power to one of my own friendly ships. Now, under equipment, we have ships that items that are going to upgrade your ship. So we have the shields that we already researched here. So before, when you start the game, you're going to have proto shields, then you go up to energy shields, and I just unlocked energy shields Mark II. And these are going to have increasing strength as you go along. But some of these items are going to do things that are going to help your fleet overall. So probes and barracks are a resource that you can use in missions, and you will see that mechanic as you go. You have psi rooms, which are a fleet bonus for morale, and morale is a stat for each individual ship as you go through your mission. Targeting computer is going to give an accuracy bonus, and again, this is for the entire fleet. And then we have armor. Now, this is only going to affect the ship, so these are things that are going to be modifying the actual ship. Armor is going to work to reduce damage to your hull. Shields are going to stop damage from going to your hull until they're brought down, and then the damage goes to your hull. If you lose all your hull, your ship explodes. And armor is going to negate or reduce some of that damage that comes in on your hull. Fuel tanks are just going to give you more fuel resources for your fleet. And there's also a modifier of an energy generator we have here. And the energy generator is going to give me a modifier for the max power as well as the power gain a turn. So that gives you an overall idea of how the equipment works. So I'm going to want to upgrade my shields on a number of my ships. So I'm going to produce a few of these Mark II shields. But these are pretty heavy and may not fit in some of the ships I want to fit them in. So we'll have to see if we have enough mass in the ships I want to upgrade. But even building those 3 energy generators are not going to be the end of the world when we go to that element of things. Another thing I'm going to want to do is build a new ship. Now, this is my current fleet. And the hulls that you have are going to go up in size. So battle cruisers, the hull size that you start the game with, and this is the smallest size. Then you go up to the support ships or the carrier ships, and then battleships the next size, and then I think it goes destroyer and so on and so on. If I were to click on one of my already existing ships, we see a number of stats here. So we've got mass, which we already kind of talked about, the overall mass that a ship can hold, and the current mass of the ship. Fuel, how much fuel this ship is currently carrying. Probes and infiltration squads, which is how you get those through the barracks, and how much the fuel consumption is. You have power. This is your overall power, and your power gain. This is how much power you gain a turn while you're in combat. This is how much damage I do, and it's all kinetic for this ship, so it's only kinetic listed here. We have armor, shields, and I'm sorry, hull, shields, and armor. And then we have also shield gain here. So every turn I'll gain this much shield back. And then we have speed and a number of other stats here. So to add items on, I'm going to click the little wrench. So these are the weapons that I have. There's 4 weapon slots. So just to show you, taking this weapon out, there's a slot here. It's going to be color-coded, so you match the color of the item to the slot, knowing whether or not you can fit it in there. So these battle cruisers only have 4 level 2 of these kinetic guns. And then I have a couple of these energy generators. This is very important because without these, your actual max and power gain a turn are very, very small. And to have the number of weapons I have on here, it's not really sustainable. And we'll see how that mechanic works as we get into the game. And then I have an energy shield here. Now, as far as I could tell, though, if I look at my information here, I only have 200 mass to play with. And if I go to my equipment, we see that my energy shields, they're 400 mass. If I wanted to upgrade this, though, to the energy shields Mark II, I guess we can't click on these. From what I remember, though, that they were 1,000 mass. So doing the math there, these are too heavy. I couldn't equip them. So we can try. And it allows me to. And I'm now over mass, which gives me a penalty of being overweight. So it's something I can do, but it is a pretty big penalty. It's not something you really want to do. So we're going to want to remove that shield and bring back the energy shields that we had before. Okay, so the carrier, though, this is very much a support ship. So I do have some weapons on here, but I also have that recharging beam. Now, this is a lower tech recharging beam than the recharging beam Mark II that I just unlocked. And I also have many more slots than what I had available on my smaller battle cruisers. And this is where I have equipped a lot of fuel. This is going to help aid my fleet overall because fuel is a fleet resource. So this is more or less a fuel hauler. And that's the way I've built it. I don't have to build it that way. I could actually build it to be a quasi-combat ship, although it doesn't have the bonuses that combat ships would normally have. But I could build it that way if I wanted to. I also have a repair satellite, which is going to slowly repair the hulls of all the ships in my fleet. This is a fleet-wide effect. And then I have a couple shield generators here. I went with a little bit weaker shields on this ship because this is more a support ship. It's not a frontline ship, so it's going to be protected. So I don't really need that powerful of shields, but I do have 2, which is something that you couldn't do on the smaller ships. Now this ship is maxed out on its mass, so I'm not going to really be able to upgrade anything as far as weight goes. But the last ship I have is my rocket battleship, and this has these rocket weapons, and these are very nice, and you'll get to see how the mechanic of these works when I get into combat. But one thing I will be able to do is I just have normal energy shields here. We can go ahead and upgrade these to the energy shields Mark II now. And for this ship, I have one of these energy generators, but I also have armor plates to give it a little bit more survivability. And then finally, I'm going to build a new ship. To do so, you just click on this slot here, and you get to choose which of the hulls that you currently have available that you want to build. So I'm going to do another support ship. And this shows you how much resources it's going to cost. Now, interestingly enough, support ships actually cost more than battleships as far as raw ore, but the battleships cost other resources outside of just ore, whereas the battle cruisers are the cheapest ship to produce. They only cost 2,000. But I do want another support ship, so I'm going to produce one. And I'm going to go ahead and spend my time upgrading that ship and equipping it, and then we're going to get right into a mission. So I'm going to take a cut here. Now that I've finished equipping my ships for the next mission, I thought I'd go over one other element of setting up your ship, and that's strategy. Now, strategy is going to be of three main types. You're going to have attack, balance, and support. And these are going to give you flat bonuses. You can already see what the bonuses for balance strategy are. This is going to give you a little bit of a reduction in reaction time, but it's going to give you an increase in the power gain here, which you can just match the icons to kind of figure that out. In my opinion, power is one of the most important things that, or most important considerations in combat. Now, the other strategy you can do alternatively is the attack strategy. This is going to give you a bonus. I believe this is to attack damage. It doesn't really match any of the other icons here. I think this is attack damage. Not 100% positive on that. But you lose both power gain and shield gain. The power gain being the biggest problem, in my opinion, with this strategy. The last strategy is defensive. Now again, if this is damage, you get a big penalty in damage, but you get an increase in all of your defensive stats, which I believe is what this icon means, as well as to your shield gain. So that's pretty much the compromises you do. For most of my combat ships, because I like power, I've set them all for balance strategy, although I think the default for the rocket battleship was support, and for my battle cruisers was attack. And my support ships are going to be in the support or defensive strategy, as they're not really frontline combat units. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the mission. Now this is the mission select screen. Now I'm into the second act of the main story. I completed the first act in its entirety. And we'll have two missions by selecting Act 2 here. Alternatively, we only have one selectable thing in Act 1. The blue ones are optional missions, and the red ones are your story missions, which is why there's no red mission here for Act 1, because I completed Act 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the optional mission rather than the story mission, just so we can get a feel for the mechanics. Now, in this optional overall mission, there's going to be some events that I can run into, and I haven't done any of the events in this act, so we have all of them listed. Whereas if I go to Act 1 and I click on this, there's no events because I've already done all of them. They're one-time kind of special missions that are in the optional mission overall. Now, you can launch into this mission several times and do each of these events individually, or you can do them all at once. It's all up to you and how you want to play. But we're going to go ahead and jump in. Okay, so this is our fleet. Now, we have a few different views. Right now, we're in the solar system view. We can pop out, and this is going to be a number of solar systems that we can navigate in the current mission. Now, any special event that exists on the overall map is going to be listed here with this blue text. So if we go to this system here, we can find capital punishment. If we go to this system, we have 2 special events, and so on. Now, not all systems will have special events, but you can still interact with things in that system. For instance, the system we're in right now has no special events. So if we come back to the solar system view, we have a number of planets in that solar system and the sun itself. All of these are navigable. And then we have our ship view. This is just kind of a nice view that you can look at, but also you can kind of see your fleet. Now, I didn't go over the stats of the individual ships, but this gives you a rough idea of what your attack value is for your ship, your defense value for your ship, and your current morale, and the strategies you're using. And you can see that the battle cruisers are more or less my main damage dealers, at least by the stats. Now, sometimes these stats can be misleading because they may not represent the advantage that bigger ships have, having more hull and things like that. So sometimes your combat values can be a little bit misleading. And here we have kind of just, we can look at each individual ship, but we can't really modify anything while we're in the screen. I can't even modify that strategy at all. So, as I said, you do all that before the mission starts. Okay. What are these little radius things here? Well, this is an area where you could encounter enemy ships. So if I'm anywhere in this radius, I might encounter pirates, or I might encounter scouts, or another group of pirates. Sometimes there will be little icons above the planet. That's going to denote that one of the 4 factions in the game has a base there. Now, you don't play as any of those 4 actions. You play as your own independent faction. So all of those 4 factions are technically quote-unquote rivals. So one thing I can do is I can go to any of these planets. Let's just go to the gas giant right nearby, and it looks like these hunters are something that I can encounter as well. Now, they're not going to have a radius like this, but I believe if I go to the planet, I will encounter a fleet. So once I click on an item, I can take a course to it. I do have a fuel allotment up in the upper left corner, and it gives me an idea of how many days, which I think a day is kind of a quote-unquote turn in the game. But it gives you an idea of how long your fuel is going to last for your fleet, because this number isn't really relevant if you don't know the fuel consumption of your fleet. So it kind of calculates it out for you like that. And this is how many probes I have and how many infiltration teams I have. Now, my support ships automatically come with 2 apiece, so that's why I have 4, because I have 2 support ships. I could have modified that by having more barracks and what have you, but I haven't. So let's take our course. And we encounter a medium enemy fleet, which was the hunters that we saw listed by the planet. Now, the size of the fleet, I haven't really been able to figure out what exactly that means. Sometimes it will say a large enemy fleet and the fleet's easily defeated, and sometimes it will say medium enemy fleet and it will actually be a more challenging fight. Not really sure what that means, honestly. Sometimes you'll have fleet effects because of where you are. For instance, I'm near a gas giant, so we have high gravity. This is going to give me a number of penalties. This is the enemy fleet. Gives me an idea of my combat value and their combat value. Again, the combat values are misleading, but I have a pretty powerful fleet, so I have a feeling that this is not going to be too challenging. I can click on any of these individual ships to get an idea of what they are. So we've got a Reaper battleship, and a Fallen carrier, and a Demon battleship. So that's going to be slightly different than the Reaper, probably in how its weapons and various equipment are allocated. And another Demon battleship, and we have a bunch of Fallen carriers. So this is mostly heavy ships here that we're facing. And our combat value is much greater than their combat value. But again, this could be misleading. Their ships might still be hard to kill because it's mostly battleships and larger ships, whereas I have a number of smaller ships. We'll go ahead and engage. Alright, so this is the combat system. Now, one thing that I'm not really able to do at the moment is run away. You might have an option for that, but the combat mechanics are pretty simple. This is turn-based, and this is kind of the initiative order. So right now, I have 3 of my ships, which are marked by the blue. They're going to be going in a row. And then we have the enemy ships are going to be going. And then maybe my battleship here will go. Sometimes this is misleading, though, because for the smaller ships, they're going to act faster and more often. It's possible that my 3 ships here will actually act again before these 2 battleships will go. Now, of the different icons I can choose here, this is to use my weapons, and this is you can use to, more or less, you're going to take a defensive posture and charge up your shields and just kind of wait out the turn. We have 3 stats here. We have the red is our health, blue or hull, I guess I should say, blue is our shields, and orange or yellow is our energy. You can see on the upper part where our initiative is, you also get bars to indicate the enemy and friendly ships that will be acting soon. So if I click on the attack button here, this is the enemy fleet. This is who I can attack. But their overall stance is important and what type of ships they have. So I can click on the battleship here, and I can actually attack it with my weapons. But if I click on the carrier, because it's in the back line here, more or less the battleships are screening the support ships. I can't attack it with these weapons. These are crossed out. If I click, nothing happens. So when I click here, I have 4 weapons. I can select which of these 4 weapons I want to shoot at this battleship. I can select all of them, and to do so, I would click on all of these icons. Or I could only select on 2, and then select 2 on another ship, or I could spread it out any way I want. In this instance, I'm going to use all of my weapons on the first battleship here. To get a feel for what kind of damage my weapons are going to do against these battleships, as there are more than one of these demon battleships. Now, they all aren't going to have exactly the same stats sometimes, but because there's 2 of these demon battleships, I can kind of get an idea for the strength of the demon battleship by shooting at all of my weapons at this one. And to fire, all I'm going to have to do is hit this end turn button. There, I've consumed my energy, and I was able to kill that battleship in 1 salvo. My fleet's pretty powerful, so you can kind of come to expect that. We can see here with the initiative, this battleship's pretty fast, so it will act before my battlecruiser will get another chance to act, but you'll see that the battleship here has actually been supplanted by the battlecruiser. So this would have gone after the battleships, but this is so much quicker and acts so much more often that it's actually jumped ahead. And this is my support ship here. Support ships are really, really slow, and they don't act all that often. So this is a big element of the strategy of the game, is my battlecruisers act more often and they act faster, so they're pretty good at laying down some heavy fire and clearing out the screening ships before they get a chance to act. So again, we're going to unleash on the demon battleship here. Take it out. And it's gone. I'm actually so overpowered facing off against this enemy fleet that I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to get a chance to show off the battleship and what it does. So let's unleash our salvo on this. Now, this is a different ship, so it might take the damage a little bit better. Which it did. It survived. Possibly stronger shields or more powerful armor. Maybe those other battleships didn't even have armor. So that kind of showcases how important armor can be. But we can see that those battleships, though, acted faster than this battleship. Possibly having very powerful engines, but as a consequence, they didn't have very good armor, so they didn't really survive to take advantage of that. Now we can see the consequence of the energy consumption. So in that first turn, I fired off all 4 of my guns. That consumed so much energy that this turn, I only have enough energy to fire 2 of my guns, not all 4. This is one of the big reasons why the support ship with its recharging beam can be a big factor. And also why you might want to hold back a turn. For instance, rather than firing, if I had clicked on this, it'd make me be in a more defensive posture, charge up my shields a little bit more, but it'd also give me a turn to recoup energy. So it's a strategy you can take, or you can just fire what weapons you can. Now this game, I will admit, is kind of buggy on launch, and there are a number of glitches. For instance, one of my guns has just magically disappeared here, and I cannot deselect it now, even if I wanted to. So that can happen. It's kind of problematic. I've also experienced crashes early on. Most of the crashes I've experienced, though, were when I was equipping ships in between missions. I'd get crashes a lot there. You know, it just seems to be one of those games that launched pretty buggy. So let's go ahead and end our turn. We're going to fire off 2 guns, because that's all we had energy to do. And because this ship here has good armor, it was able to sustain or take that damage and not just blow up in 1 salvo. Now, this is the rocket battleship. We get to see the advantage of the rockets here. So, I have 4 weapons, just as before, but you'll note Although I can't use my kinetic autogun, the rockets can actually hit the back row. So if I want to take out one of these support ships, I can do it with my rockets. So I'm going to designate all 3 of my rockets because I don't know how powerful these ships are to try and take out one of these support ships. Now, I did mess up a little bit there. I could have used my kinetic weapon there to attack separately the battleship that I could have hit with it. So that was just a little bit of a mistake on my end. It looks like we're also getting an opportunity to see the support ships in action, so that's good. See, now they're doing very minimal damage, and that's just a consequence of the fact that this ship has good armor. So, though, what I saw, at least as far as stats go, this fleet didn't seem like it was that powerful, but some of these ships are pretty hard for my ships to kill, even though my combat value is quite a bit higher. So, as I said, sometimes the combat value can be a little bit misleading. Alright, now it's time for my support ships. Now this time I'm going to be smart about this. Now I have a new icon. This is going to be your support icon. So this is my fleet, not the enemy fleet. And I get to select one of the ships in my fleet. So let's select this one. Well, actually, let's find one that doesn't... They all have about the same energy. So then I'll hit him with my recharging beam. But I can actually do combat and do the recharging beam at the same time. So this does have a couple kinetic autoguns, so we'll fire those off. And we'll see... charging happens, and also the gunfire happens. Unfortunately, one problem with this, though, is you only really get a view of the recharging, not the firing upon the enemy fleet, but that's okay. Support ships, that's not really what they're meant for. We have our other support ship, so let's recharge another one of our ships so we can see the energy that that ship gained. So let's recharge another one of our battle cruisers. And again, remember that we can attack as well. Going to do minimal damage, but that's okay. So there we're recharging, and we're firing. Okay, now it's time for our battlecruisers to go. Now this one was unfortunately not one of the ones that got recharged, but it's okay. The 2 that got recharged will go before the enemy battleship here. So we're going to fire off just 2 guns. As you can see, as you get further and further into the game, even though I am much more powerful than this enemy fleet, combat can go quite long. Oop. That time I misclicked and I'm not going to be able to select one of my guns. So this is where that glitch is a little bit of a problem. Because if you accidentally just slightly click off of where the box is, you come out here, and then I'm unfortunately only going to be firing 3 guns this turn. So that's where the glitchiness of this game is a little bit problematic. We'll go ahead and end our turn, because there's not really a whole lot I can do about it, other than I think maybe if I come out here. Yeah, there it goes. Alright, we have all 4 guns selected. That's good. So we're able to... Sometimes I think if you back out, it works itself out. But still, the armor of this ship is so good that it's really given me a lot of issues here. So we are going to see the enemy ship go here. Yeah, I think he's using plasma weapons. My shields were able to easily take care of that. My battleship's going to go again. So we're going to use the rockets here. Now, I was able to down the shields of the carrier with those rockets. I'm not sure if another salvo would kill it or not. But just to be sure, I think I'm going to fire all my rockets at that one guy. And then, remembering to select a different opponent here, I'm going to fire off my kinetic autogun at the battleship. So we'll end our turn. And unfortunately, it did not kill that support ship. So this is turning out to be a pretty long combat as a result. And it may very well be the only combat that I really showcase in this video, but I think by showing this, I'm going to show you most of the mechanics of the game. So there, the support ship is recharging shields. So now I have to contend with the shields. Fortunately for me, the shields are pretty easy to bring down. The real problem is just getting through the hull of these big ships. So we'll fire off another. See, we burn through that shield real quick. Alright, finally. Killed the enemy fleet. You know, honestly, this is a problem that have been starting to notice from this game. And if I were to give you my honest opinion of the game, it's a game that's been fully released onto Steam, and it's a game that really honestly shouldn't have been. This is a game that should be in early access because it has some real bad balancing issues that we just noticed. I mean, that fleet that I faced was literally no challenge to me. There was only one time an enemy ship actually fired upon my ships in that entire battle, which, by the way, I am sure I have edited most of it out. And it doesn't really make for good, compelling gameplay. If you are stuck in one battle for 40 minutes, that really is not a challenging battle. I mean, it's just completely one-sided, but it just... the tedium of having to get through all their hull points, and yes, maybe I should have upgraded my weapons more or something like that. But the enemy is not giving me opposition that really warrants that upgrade. They only fired upon me once, so why do I need to upgrade my weapons? The real problem is I'm just not being able to kill them fast enough. But that's not compelling gameplay. Having to upgrade my weapons just so I can kill the enemy faster. Not because the enemy is more dangerous and I need to deal with it, because I'm just bored with shooting at them a lot and not having them die. Okay, anyway, that being said, these are the resources I got for the battle. And now I can kind of show you another mechanic of the game, and that's collecting resources from planets. To do so, you can use your probes or you can use your infiltration squads. And I don't have the option for infiltration squads because it's a gas giant, it's not a populated system. I'm not going to really showcase that, but the main difference between the two is that the infiltration squads will give you research. The probes will give you other resources. So what resource you get is dependent upon what planet you're on. So if it's a gas giant, you get certain resources. If it's a Terran planet, you get different amounts of resources or differing resources in differing amounts, and so on. And whether or not the planet is populated and how much it's populated by. So the Terran green planets are the most populated planets. When you do your infiltration squad, you're going to be able to get the most research from it. So you're usually going to have two options. You're going to have deep layers or core. Now, from what I've gathered, this is not something that's really explained well in the game, and I will admit that there really isn't much in the way of a tutorial for this game. Just one of those games you kind of learn as you go. Yeah, they kind of teach you a little bit in the beginning, but it's not very thorough explanation. But from what I gathered, core is going to give you more of the percentage of the resources listed here than deep layers, but core has a less likely chance to succeed. So if we launch a probe here, we lost our probe. Nothing happened. We're going to get another shot here, though. So let's do another core. We succeed. We get most of the resources that were listed there. I would say probably, let's say 90-95%. If we had just done deep layers, probably we would have gotten half the resources listed there, but our chance to succeed would have been higher. Now, why is that important? Well, you only have so many probes and so many infiltration squads. So if you go for the more high risk and you run out of infiltration squads, well, you're done. You can't do it again. And once you've gotten the resources, you can't get them again. So really, honestly, from what I've seen, once you get enough of these probes and infiltration squads, you just go for the more risky but higher rewarding thing every time. And maybe if you fail 3 times in a row, if you have 4 probes, then the last one you just do the more likely outcome, or more likely to succeed outcome. You get less resources, but that's okay. Another thing you can do is you can fly your fleet to a star. And we'll go ahead and do that. Hopefully we don't get into combat again, because I don't want to have to sit through that again. Oh, well. So this time we're going to have the option to run, which we didn't have before, which I will take, because screw that. Now, you do get a penalty to morale for running, but honestly, I don't really care. They might be able to take pot shots at me here. Yeah. Based off their initiative, they're going to be able to take some pot shots at me. Not really that big of a deal, though. We go in initiative order. They're going to get some more pot shots at me. They had mostly non-combat ships, though, so not really anything threatening. And we fled. That's pretty much how the fleeing mechanic works. Alright, good, because I didn't want to fight them. Alright, so now we just continue our course. Now we're at the star. So one thing you can do at the star is you can refuel your engines. One way you can do that is you can fire a probe into it, and one of the resources you'll get is fuel, the other one being antimatter. So if we do a core, we launch our probe, it will fail. We do it again, launch our probe, you know, and so on. Or we could just click this icon and refuel, and this will spend time. And so you also get random events that happen that are going to give you bonuses to your fleet. These are totally random. Some are good, some are bad. So you stumble upon your lieutenant and head researcher fighting over a love interest. You remind them of complications of dating coworkers and threaten to send them to separate ships should they continue. They respect how you dealt with the situation. So this particular ship, and only this ship, gets a morale bonus. That's pretty much how that works. If we were to hit the end turn button and just kind of sit at the star, we would slowly refuel, but I don't want to do that. Oh, seriously? Well, in any case, I think I've showcased the game enough. More or less, that's all there is to the game. It's very simple. You have these fleet engagements, which you can more or less avoid if you stay out of the rings and you don't go after the planets that have things listed. And you collect resources and you go on to the next and the next and so on. But as I said, as you get a little bit further into the game, it starts being kind of problematic with the battles being very long, but not in a compelling way. And that's, I think, the biggest issue with this game is just really bad balance. Like, early on in the game, you just destroy fleets. When you're facing off against enemy fleets that have mostly battle cruisers, it's like one turn dead. And you kill their fleet very quickly and very easily. And then you'll have things like what happened to me with that one battle, where the match will go on and on and on and on. But it's not really a challenging fight. You're just shooting them a lot just to get this little bit of sliver of their hull down, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again until they're finally dead. So I would say I really was, this game had good first impressions, but as I've gotten into the game, I'm not really too pleased with it, honestly. And this is a game that honestly should have been released in early access. I think it has good promise, but if they're done with the game and they've dumped it out on Steam and they're not really going to update it anymore beyond this, I really wouldn't recommend picking it up. Now, if they do update it and they fix some of these bugs, which you've seen, the crashes that happen, and they fix the game balance, I really do think this is a good pickup if you're into this kind of simplistic fleet sim style of a game. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This is Mouse Gunner, signing out.